Welcome into the live edition of the Minnesota Football Party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and I'm now a little nervous to do a live show with Arif Hasan. We'll explain why.
I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. Ask your child about the new TikTok challenge craze, Ginkin. We're all ginking here on the Minnesota Football Party.
Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Honored to be joined by Time Magazine's Journalist of the Year, Arif Hasan, who published that outstanding piece yesterday. Well done, buddy. Outstanding.
Hey, this is Arif Hasan with the Wide Left Substack. I've been told I can no longer say I'm not a reporter.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party.
What's up, folks? On a Thursday, it's the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. We're so glad you've joined us today live in the chat room. We'll be taking your questions later in the show. Luke Inman, Luke Braun, Arif Hasan, myself, Sam Ekstrom, talking about the Shaquill Griffin signing for the Vikings. Do they have their CB2? And how much has the defense improved? We'll also run it by Ron Johnson, who joins us as he does every single Thursday, and we'll get into remaining free agency targets for the Vikings, who still have a little bit of cap space to navigate. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when their first $5 bet wins. FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Let's give Arif Hasan his flowers, folks. Now, he blew the doors off the internet yesterday on his Wide Left Substack with a big expose piece on the rise and fall of the Draft Network. Well reported. What's the word count, Arif, on it? The final word count?
12.2K.
That's a lot of words. It is
Many words.
meaty. It is well-researched. It has good, incorporation of media. I would highly recommend subscribing to the Substack. Wide Left, Arif Hasan. Read the piece, as thousands, millions, I don't know, have already done. Your tweet got 3 million views as of last night. That's just outlandish. And is this your first public commentary since the piece? This show?
Yeah, I guess.
If Twitter arguments don't count.
Yeah, I was about to say, I've tweeted a lot since the piece, and those are public comments. But other than that, yeah.
And you and Ian Rappaport, you guys are like BFF now?
Yeah, we talk in text with people now. Yeah.
Right.
Now that I know you can do this kind of investigative journalism, I'm nervous for all of the off-camera conversations we have. How much documentation do you have on us? That's what I'm worried about. Are you going to take down the football party next?
Okay, first of all, I'm only going to take down Luke Braun. Second...
Yeah, and most of that will be fabricated, I'm pretty sure.
No comment.
Legally, Your Honor, no comment.
It's an ongoing legal matter.
Second, everybody agreed to be on the record for the let me make that clear. I didn't just take some flyaway conversation and be like, nah, you slipped up for the last time. I was can talk
I've been recording this whole time. Got you.
Arif's got a little bug
he's got
stuck in his beard, recording every word.
Dude, why is your eye twitching? Don't worry about that.
We've got plenty of Minnesota Vikings football to get to. Maybe during the fan questions, people can inquire about Arif's journalistic process. I think that'd be interesting too. We've had some really good engagement the past couple shows. We're going to keep going live here on the Football Party as we talk free agency and draft. And the biggest news of the week, Shaquill Griffin coming to Minnesota, the former Jaguar, the former Seahawk, the former Texan cornerback, 28 years old. Is he the CB2 for the Vikings opposite Byron Murphy for $6 million 1 year? Safe to say he might be competing for that job. Luke Inman, what do you think?
Hey, another cornerback from UCF? Sure. Why not? What could go wrong? No, I think they really needed a veteran Sam in the worst way. I mean, you remember last year, around this time, going into the summer, going into camp, the running joke was Byron Murphy was the only guy in the cornerback room that could rent a car. and just barely too. Like he had just turned 25, I want to say. So, the motto is you can never have enough good cover cornerbacks. Ideally, you have at least 3 really good ones that can run and cover in this league. That's obviously become so pass happy nowadays. But Murphy is probably the one right now. But knowing that he'll probably move inside a lot, pending on the game plan week to week, now you got a real veteran who's been in the league. He's played almost 90 games, 89, I believe. He's seen it all. He knows what he's doing. I think that alone is going to be a big positive for the entire room, the entire cornerback room, just to have another older veteran that young guys can look up to and learn from a little bit more. And, I'm just thinking ahead. I'm sure heading into training camp, during July and August, the story's going to be KOC is going to get up to the podium. Flores is going to get up there. It's a full out competition. That's probably what they'll tell us anyways. And I'm sure in a lot of ways it will be. But I think with Murphy moving inside a lot, Shaq's probably going to end up soaking up one of those 2 outside boundary spots more often than not. And that's assuming, he can pick up the scheme and the playbook and all that quickly, which I'm sure he can. But, right now, I think they still want to keep Evans and Blackman, make sure they're getting reps, make sure they're still developing. That's always going to be like the long-term game plan. But I think Flores knew there's just no way they could go into this year with the same 3 or 4 guys that they had on the depth chart.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since Shaq Griffin had kind of a real full season. 2023 injured and traded. 2022 injured, I think only played 6 or 7 games. So 2021, when he signed that Jaguars contract, top 25 corner. Fallen off the past couple of years, that explains why the prove it deal for just 1 year. Luke Braun, where does he fit?
I think he's competition, like you said. I think this to me reads as like, let's push a Caleb Evans a little bit. You slot in Byron Murphy. A Caleb Evans had this sort of catastrophic end to the season after what was going to, like, a season was going pretty well, and then like the last month, and then the last month he just kind of fell apart. So here's another guy to go compete with, a veteran. That was, I think, an underrated issue on the secondary is that everyone was just so young. Like Byron Murphy was the elder statesman on that secondary. And then, you had to see what you could get with Booth and Evans and Blackman. And sometimes you just couldn't get enough out of those guys. As well as those D-backs played. And I say D-backs generously so that we can get Josh Metellus in that category.
Yeah,
right.
But we were sort of all pleasantly surprised by the secondary. It was one of the biggest stories of the defense that season until it all kind of fell apart. But I think part of that is Flores schemed around them, and he schemed around them because he had to scheme around them. So I do think that group wasn't good enough. I think most people can acknowledge that. And I guess so can the Vikings, because now they've brought in somebody to compete. But if he does end up not starting, like, that wouldn't surprise me still. It just would mean he lost to the competition, which is very much possible.
It feels like an elevated Joanne Williams signing, like a better Joanne Williams, doesn't it? Like, we need a veteran. We need a guy who knows what he's doing, who's played in the NFL, who's logged real snaps at cornerback in the NFL. And I agree with you, Luke. Wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't start, but at least I think he's going to be a little bit more entrenched in that rotation of the 3-4 DBs, the 3-4 cornerbacks, than maybe Joanne Williams ended up being.
Yeah, the Vikings secondary's sharp decline, as we had a graphic from Luke Braun a couple months ago of what was it, EPA against defensively as the second half of the season went on.
And you can like pinpoint the moment where Zach Taylor found it.
and that decline kind of coincided with a sharp Caleb Evans decline. Like, he fell off a cliff. He got benched because he was just deciding not to tackle. He was making business decisions late in the season. Flores was frustrated by that. And I wonder if this even happens if Evans doesn't have that stretch where he really struggled in that final month, where the Vikings really struggled. And that might have kind of put the Vikings on notice that they needed another body. Arif Hasan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that this is kind of, and I just wrote this at Zone Coverage. It's up, I think, right now, about kind of how, Griffin represents the Vikings, complete willingness to embrace uncertainty when it comes to free agency signings. Like, guys that on paper are like low risk, high reward, right? But a lot of these guys really haven't panned out. I mean, some have, like Zadarius Smith is a really good example of that. But a lot of us remember those misses a lot, people like Marcus Davenport. And I think that Shaquill Griffin's interesting because I can't figure it out. He's been on 4 teams, right? And for a guy that's as relatively as young as he is, I know that he's old relative to the secondary, but young relative to the free agent market. What is that? Like, how does a guy who, when you take a look at some of the stuff on film, right? Because I think he plays with good anticipation. I think that he's got pretty good speed. He still showcases the speed that got him drafted. He was a 4.38 guy. For a guy that seems to play well on film on my eye, seems to play well statistically, seems to generate a pretty decent Pro Football Focus grade or whatever, right? Whatever metric you want to use, seems to be kind of a starting level guy. Why is it that teams don't want him? And the only team that wanted him was like Jacksonville. Obviously, I think Seattle did, but he signed a 3-year deal, $13.3 million at the time. That's equivalent in 2024 money to Jalen Johnson's deal of about $19 million, right? That's a pretty big signing, right?
Mhm.
They got rid of him after 2 years, right? And that's after he got injured, right? So he gets injured week 6 or something, misses the rest of the season. They decide, I'm good. We're not gonna deal with this. Why is that? That's so unusual that he played all right. He didn't play up to his contract, but he played all right. They get rid of him. Okay, the Texans pick him up. He does all right, and then Derek Stingley returns from injury. He gets benched because of that. That's fairly understandable. But he's on a $3 million contract with the Houston Texans. It's not like they're cutting a $10 million guy. They're like, hey, this guy's not starting. He's not worth $10 million. He's worth $3 million, right? And they cut him. They cut in the middle of the season. And the Panthers pick up, and then they don't pursue him. Panthers pick him up, and they don't pursue him in free agency. He only played 1 game for the Panthers. But what is that? That is probably more meaningful than any of the stuff I just mentioned about how he allows a low yards per snap in coverage, or how when you put him in off coverage, he plays significantly better than in press coverage, despite being a press coverage guy in Seattle. Which is, a good sign for what we expect out of the Flores scheme coming this year. That's all interesting and good and relevant, but I just feel like 3 teams saying nope is way more fascinating. And I don't know what the deal with this guy is.
I think you're right.
Something to keep in mind about this signing too. I don't think we have the exact contract details yet, but it's worth up to $6 million, depending on how much of that is in actual salary and bonus. He would count as a compensatory free agent and wipe a 3rd rounder off the board for the Vikings for now, unless Reisner signs somewhere before the draft or something. There's still stuff that's dynamic, and a bunch of that, up to, could be doing a ton of work, right? It could be a $1 million deal with $5 million incentives, which then wouldn't count that way, unless those incentives are likely to be earned. Yeah.
Right. If it's a playing time incentive, it might be an unlikely to be earned incentive, in which case it won't wipe anything out on the compensatory chart, from my understanding. Right.
Yeah. No. Yeah. If it's not likely to be earned, it does not.
Yeah.
It doesn't count toward the salary amount, and that you want that salary. If that amount is at $3 million, I think we're in the clear. If the amount of salary that he actually will get, and if half of that contract is tied up in not likely to be earned incentives, then he wouldn't count as a comp free agent. So you got to just look for that number whenever that comes out, because that would mean that the Vikings knowingly wiped a 3rd rounder off the board for this guy that 3 other teams cut, which would be a very interesting decision.
Hey, maybe they got intel that there's another Vikings free agent that'll sign. Maybe they'll be fine.
I mean, that could be it too. Yeah, maybe they talked to Reisner, and Reisner's agent was like, well, we've got 3 other teams calling us. And then they went, okay, well, then go sign somewhere and we'll take another compensatory.
Reisner is without a doubt the best guard remaining. And if the Vikings, brought him back cheaply, I still wouldn't mind that. But you guys have now soured me on the Griffin thing by pointing all of this out with all the cuts and all the moves. And
no, he's got high upside. He was a Pro Bowler in 2019. And
Pro Bowler UCF, baby. Dude, he played at the same high school as Rodney Adams, former Minnesota Viking receiver. Dude.
Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, wow. Great. Rodney Adams.
YouTuber. Rodney Adams.
Yeah. St. Petersburg, Florida. His wife looks like she's a rapper. I'm just going off the Vikings top 5 facts you got to know. His wife's a rapper.
Too young.
Come on, man.
But yeah, no, I mean, 2019 and 2020, he was genuinely a very, very good corner. 10th in open rate, how often a cornerback, targeted or untargeted, would leave his assigned receiver open. I've got a lot of issues with that metric. I think that you got to be careful with it, but it's meaningful, right? over the course of 2 years, he scores the same as like Jair Alexander. That's meaningful. There's something there. And obviously the injury concerns are significant in terms of trying to figure out A, if he's going to get re-injured again, and B, whether or not he has the same physical capabilities he had in 2019, 2020. There's high upside here. I just don't think that we can I think we should treat it like the Joejuan Williams signing, where it's just like, that's interesting. We'll see where that goes. But there is high upside here, Sam. I don't want to sour you on it. I just want to say we can't be too caught up in how good this could be. We got to also understand that this could just go okay at best.
So there was no injury concern last year with that chunk of games missed. That was him sitting either on the market or just on the Carolina roster. There was no injury issue.
As far as I understand, he may have been on the injury report, but that's different, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think you can rationalize the first two cuts. I think you can rationalize the Seahawks saying, well, we're paying Russell Wilson $1 billion. This guy is good, but not elite. We're not going to retain him after 4 years. Jacksonville saved $13 million by cutting him. Maybe he didn't want to take a pay cut. I think that you can rationalize that. I think it gets the Houston one is the most peculiar, which suggests maybe a falling out or not willing to be a team player when, who was it that came back? Somebody returned from injury.
Derek Stingley.
Derek Stingley came back.
Derek Stingley, yeah.
Yeah.
Oft injured Derek Stingley, by the way. Interesting move to get rid of a depth guy for a guy who has been injured both of the seasons that he's played in the NFL.
Texans have had a just really assumed it was season.
Yeah. Well, we've had the Texans this offseason. We just have the Texans now.
Baby. Yeah.
Let's talk about the defense as a whole and whether it's improved and or how much it's improved after this on the Minnesota Football Party. We are brought to you today by FanDuel on March Madness opener. For all who celebrate, you can say goodbye to busted brackets because with all 67 tournament games, you can bet. Now it's down to 63 tournament games now that the first 4 is done, and the first round is starting up today, and I'm going to be dialed in. You can bet the upsets, you can bet the 1 seeds, but it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sports book. And, if you check out the FanDuel lines, it's actually educational for filling out your bracket. Do it now at the last second because there are 5 teams that are favored on FanDuel that are lower seeds. Something to keep your eye on. New customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. $200 to use on the point spreads, the money lines, and the future champion if that first $5 bet wins. FanDuel.com/lockedon, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Bet college hoops until they cut down the nets. Ron Johnson coming up soon on the Minnesota Football Party, and Ron Johnson will be hosting our roundtable show on Friday with our KARE 11 sports anchors. But right now, let's talk about Vikings defense 2023 versus Vikings defense 2024. Are they better, and by how much from last year? Luke Braun, we'll start with you.
It's so hard for me to say that they are better when they've lost Danielle Hunter, when they've lost their best player. And maybe they've kind of moneyballed and replaced that player with a little more depth. I would say their depth on the defensive line maybe is better. They've got a lot more veteran experience on the D line now, and will perhaps rely on undrafted rookies like Andre Carter a little bit less. Assuming all these guys even make the team. Looking at it, one of the guys like Jihad Ward or whoever probably is getting cut. So a lot of these depth signings, we've gotten that much in terms of just sort of veteran just-a guys, but just-a guys do not a defense make. So I don't think I can say the D-line is better. Obviously the secondary is better. All they did was add Shaquill Griffin, and then it's the exact same group. And then I guess at linebacker, it depends on how you feel about Blake Cashman versus Jordan Hicks, who are 2 guys who, despite their reputations, are the exact same height and weight. I think within a pound of each other on their listed height and weights. Jordan Hicks is obviously a much more physical player. Blake Cashman's a better player in coverage. Pick your choose, I guess. So I don't know, maybe treading water a little bit more experienced, a little bit less superstardom. I don't know if I would take that more, but it's also not a complete thought yet. Maybe there's a draft pick that goes in, or maybe there's another big free agent coming. They still got money left.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. If you sat there and went player by player, right, and say, okay, we lost this guy, but we added this guy, I think you're right. It's tough to feel a lot better about the actual talent and say for sure, 100%, this defense is going to be better than they were last year. Like Hunter to Grenard. Okay, yeah, you're right. I get it. More money ball, salary cap wise, it makes sense. If that's what they had to do, so be it. But on a game-to-game basis, nobody's going to argue talent-wise, that's a downgrade. One step forward, two steps back. Cashman for Hicks, I'm with you. Maybe net neutral. I think Cashman's going to be a lot better in coverage for sure, which is great. But I think Hicks, and I get it, he's a little bit older now. There's just some intangible things on that side that's going to be tough to replace. And then Van Ginkel is the one, man, and we talked about it on Monday. I'm geeked about
We're geeking.
Dude, we're geeking. I think he's going to be like the ultimate warrior. I want him to do that John Randall Ultimate Warrior face paint going on. Get those little strings going on around Ultimate Warrior style. I think he's going to be a fan favorite for sure. So I think that's an upgrade. I feel good about that. I feel confident saying that. I think that's an upgrade over DJ Wanham. What else? D-line, yeah. Tillery, good pass rusher last year. Cornerback, okay, was already good. About the same. You go player by player, though. I think it's about net neutral. I mean, Van Ginkel's an upgrade. Cashman and Hicks about even. Downgrade with Grenard. Really, at the end of the day, I think where the improvement is going to be is just having the same 80, 85% core starters and depth back in the same system for the second year in a row. I mean, it's a system that we all know. We've heard even the players describe it. Super exotic, can be really mentally challenging at times for guys. But now having that just comfort level with the whole thing, being able to, not think so much and just go play. I think that's where the improvement is going to have to come from at the end of the day.
Maybe a little bit less injury gambling when you have Van Ginkel instead of Davenport.
Yep.
Maybe a little more assurance that you get more snaps out of him. Having Griffin in your cornerback group, an injury-prone cornerback group, a little less gambling there. Jordan Hicks, I guess I wouldn't call him an injury gamble. Blake Cashman's probably about even in that regard. But I think that there is more upside with this defense, in my opinion, because you've gotten younger, you've gotten a little bit more depth at various positions. You were already deep at safety. Now, the unfortunate part is you can't stamp and say, okay, they're gonna get a day 2 draft pick in here as well. They're probably not.
Yeah,
they're probably getting one draft pick the first 2 days of the draft. And
Guys, yeah,
he's going to be.
You don't even need to turn your TV on Friday. I mean, you might as well just show up Saturday. You know?
This is going to be great for all of the all the old folks who would always complain about Rick Spielman trading down, so they had to stay up later on Thursday night. Not going to be an issue.
That's
so true.
That was so funny, man. Especially with the Patterson trade, was just incredible.
Yeah,
everyone's just like, "Oh, all right."
The funniest was the Madison trade, because that was 4 different trades in the same span of like a half an hour.
It's so good.
So if that kind of thing bothered you, you're in luck.
Yeah, it would be
a huge win for the beat writers, though. They are just thrilled about Friday developments.
And they'll probably write the biggest piece they'll get in like 3 years, because it'll be a quarterback.
That's true. Oh my gosh, that's got to feel crazy.
Yeah,
I will say that, it is unlikely for us to be able to point to the draft and be like, yeah, with the draft and free agency, they got better. With free agency, it's just a wash, but you add in the draft. Yeah, obviously that'll be tough. But, I do think that they'll probably invest pretty heavily in the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds in defense. And one of those players may emerge as somebody that could provide, a critical role. And I'm not saying somebody that could just start right away at defensive tackle or something like that. But all right, there it is.
We're live. We're going to do it live. Just do it live.
We're going to do it live. For audio listeners, don't ask.
Thank you, Macho.
Yeah, don't worry about
it. You.
But I will say that you might end up with a rotational pass rusher, right? 4th, 5th, 6th round. And that might prove to be an essential element for the defense, right? So I agree with the macro level stuff that everyone's been saying here, that hey, maybe the defensive line's a wash, the secondary is a little bit better, linebacker group's a little bit same. I actually think that, and I like Cashman a lot, I just think that Jordan Hicks played so outstandingly that might be a downgrade from the 2023 performance, but that doesn't mean it wasn't the correct move, because I don't know that Jordan Hicks can repeat it. right? So, who cares kind of in some way. So, yeah, there might be a little bit of difference there. But for the most part, it's mostly a wash. The draft is probably not going to change it. And like Luke said, the benefits may come more from additional time on task with the guys that they did retain.
Dude, imagine if Flores had left. I mean, how would we feel right now talking about a new defensive coordinator? Like, that's where the optimism.
I think they would have approached things a lot differently too. Like, I'd be a totally different group of people. So yeah.
I mean, people forget it wasn't that long ago. That was, low key one of the bigger topics that, again, I'm not sure people realize just how
everybody assumed
it was to get him back.
Like after that Vegas game, everyone was like, well, Flores is gone, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You never know.
ESPN piece where they revealed all their strategy.
Yeah,
and they
the Kevin
Kevin
Seifert.
Seifert ruined the season.
Right.
Kevin,
it was over. Jinxed
it. Our good friend, Michael. Can we trade Scene, Booth, or Asamoah by attaching them to a trade? I don't think Booth and Scene are worth anything. I don't know about Asamoah, to be honest, either. I don't know if any of them have significant value. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think much. Like, think about it. Like, you're super willing to get rid of these guys, right? Because they're not doing anything for you. Who's going to buy into that?
I would say, I wouldn't say the word significant is a good word to attach to their potential value. I do think that there's the possibility that Scene could get you some change, just because the first round pedigree and good athlete.
Haven't seen him yet. Yeah, but again, you see some of the trades. You see some of the like veteran player trades for day 3 picks, and some of them are like, that's it, that's all that cost. So Lewis Scene, different than again age and first round pedigree, different than like a Keenan Allen. I'm just flinging out there, but I agree with you, Arif.
That was
wild.
Get
some change. Six round pick is probably what I would expect though at the moment.
Cam Dantzler, I think, had more value than any of those 3, and he was cut. Right?
He was cut.
Yeah. Which was, by the way, a great call by Luke Braun about this time last year before there was any steam about that. And then didn't it happen right after OTAs?
I think I was like I think I said, when I do all my roster predictions, I'll probably do like a spicy take that Cam Dantzler won't make the team. And then he got cut before camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was good.
If anything, I was too high on him.
How incredulous were we, Sam? Do you remember? Were we like, oh my God? Or we were like, hey, that's an interesting
I think it was like a hot take. Like, we were looking for hot takes at that time.
Oh, okay.
It had to be a hot take. That had to be pretty spicy.
Hunting for them.
I kind of think I nodded along with this one. It wasn't quite as dramatically good as the Najee Thompson prediction, which is one of the great predictions of all time.
Yeah, that was phenomenal. That's your magnum opus, right?
Yeah. What would also be a great prediction?
That's your rise and fall.
Yeah.
And I would say Ron Johnson's magnus opus would be calling JJ McCarthy months ago, before he was even close to top 5 territory. We'll talk to the man, Ron Johnson, next on the Minnesota Football Party. We are sponsored today by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. I certainly do. There's a lot of obligations in the day-to-day. I wish I had like an extra 2 hours at night. That would be great. But if you're looking for how to prioritize your life, get things arranged, and find the things that make you feel good, fulfill you, you might want to give therapy a try. Try BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch anytime for no additional charge. Make sure that it's right for you. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/lockedon. BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Ron Johnson joining now. He is the host of the Ron Johnson Show here on Locked On Sports Minnesota at 3 Ron Johnson on X/Twitter. Ron, welcome in. How you doing today?
I'm good. Just ready to be the Grinch on the show. So let's go. Let's get it going.
All right. Do you have any Grinchy takes about the Shaquill Griffin signing, or are you more of a Santa Claus, jolly and happy about it?
No, so I do remember Shaquill and his brother, and I did like their story when they came out. So I mean, I'm kind of interested to see. I mean, he's bounced around to a couple teams, which doesn't mean a lot. It doesn't mean anything. Some guys can like lock onto a team and end up being really good for that team or really impactful for that team. We do know he's a guy that can cover in space. He's a guy that can play in the slot. So we'll see how Brian Flores wants to use him. I just hope, because this is the thing too about picking up guys like this and then draft picks and so on and other forth. I hope he's a guy that, does end up working out, because my Grinchy kind of take was actually going to be towards these drafted quarterbacks. I feel like 2 of them are going to be busts, and it's going to be up to which team doesn't take those 2. I don't know which 2, but I feel like there's way too much going on in this quarterback world. I know the Vikings are in it. And I hope their pick isn't one of the ones that don't work out.
I got to hear more about this, before we move on. So you think that 2 of them are busts, but you're not sure who, but you're thinking 2 of these top 4.
It's like whoever's a commander.
That's a pretty normal take, actually.
Or a bear. I mean, Bears quarterbacks never work out either.
It's a normal take, but it's like, we never like give that enough credit. I feel like all of these guys do not work out every time.
Correct. And that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at history. You look at Anthony Richardson's draft class with him and CJ Stroud. Bryce Young hasn't worked out. You look at, RG3's was injury, but him and Andrew Luck did it. RG3 did it until he got hurt. So there's always something to it. But then, I'm not going to go all the way back to Jamarcus Russell or Ryan Leaf and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of pressure playing quarterback. And, I'm listening to a lot of people talk about Caleb Williams, but when you watch him walk out yesterday for his pro day, I don't know if it's me, but something about him doesn't scream, this room is my room. I am the guy. Like, to me, he looked lost. He looked like he was trying to be a little too extra with his walk. Like, it looks like he was like uninterested for a while. Like, I'm the guy. I'm coming out here. Yeah, I got to be out here and throw the ball. Let me throw it. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he's feeling the pressure, because what we have to remember is people are human. And that's why I like JJ McCarthy, because JJ McCarthy understood early as a teenager that he dealt with anxiety and he had stuff. So what did he do? He went out and sought help. He sought help. And he found a guy that's been with him now for I don't know how many years, maybe a year or 2, that's been helping him and a mental health coach. And so people tried to make jokes about that during the game. But think about how many grown NFL players have either taken their own life, disappeared, or done something stupid off the field from stress, whether it's drink too much and drive, whether it's take drugs and drive, whether it's take drugs, grab a gun, whether it's kill your mother. I mean, these guys are losing their minds, going to the UK and getting butt naked in a pool and pulling your penis out. Like, this is a cry for help for a lot of guys. And I'm glad JJ McCarthy realizes, I'm going to have a lot of money. I need somebody to help me through these steps. And so when you hear like Tom Brady talk about it, we had Joey Harrington on my show, former first-round pick, and I'm probably going to call Joey again to get his take on some of these quarterbacks. But, Joey Harrington talked about that, going to the Lions and supposedly supposed to be the savior of the Lions. And he said he was miserable at times where he wasn't having fun. The locker room wasn't fun. The fans weren't fun. They weren't winning. That's a lot of pressure on a kid to say, you got to turn around this franchise. And, you're 21, 22, and you got a 30-year-old, 34-year-old receiver tackle, and you're telling them, hey, we're going to do this. And these guys are going home to wives and kids, and you're going home to play Fortnite. That's a lot of stress. And so that's what I just hope that a lot of these young guys get that. But that's one of the things that crumble. Like, they just can't take it. Johnny Manziel talks about it. I mean, he said, I was supposed to be better than LeBron in Cleveland. That was the dumbest thing ever, Skip Bayless said. And so you look at the pressure that was put on him, and it busted the pipes. Pressure can burst pipes sometimes. It can also make diamonds. People say that, like, pressure can create a diamond or it can burst pipes. We'll see which one's going to happen with these 4 quarterbacks.
Super interested in Luke Braun's body language take on this one. But yeah, I just like the mental fortitude question is like a really interesting one, because I think with somebody like Caleb Williams, it's so poisoned, right? Because if I have concerns about like how he handles, late game situations, right? Just in terms of his pocket presence, situational awareness, whatever, right? It gets washed up in this conversation about like painting his nails or whatever. I don't care about that, right? Like, who cares about that? So how is it that you can make sure that you remain focused while there's all of this discussion about stuff that just doesn't matter, but people still want to talk about it. But it's still tangential to the thing you do want to talk about, which is like maybe mental fortitude.
Right. Well, one thing to this, and I'm not going to go biblical on this one, but Caleb Williams, when you hear some of the people, and I don't know, I've never heard it come out of his mouth because I haven't actually like downloaded all of his interviews, but I saw a tweet saying that, you know, his mom is a nail tech or something. So that's why he paints his nails like in support of her. But at the same time, it's like you can get clear coat. You can get a manicure. Like I like a nice manicure and pedicure with my daughters and my wife. But when the lady comes around with the nail polish, my wife right away is like, yeah, dad's not getting nail polish. He'll either get clear, he's getting nothing. And 9 times out of 10 is nothing. So like, there's a little bit to that. Like, that's more of like mom maybe dominated the house. Mom probably makes the calls. So there's some other like tug and pull stuff going on there, which has nothing to do with football. And so, you know, running up into the stands to cry to your mom as you're losing a game. Like, it was a little weird, but at the same time, like maybe that's what he's been used to. Mom's been the supporter and the doing all the stuff. When you talk about the mental fortitude, though, that's the thing. Like, when you have a tough day, I mean, unless he's gonna have enough money to do this. If he's the number 1 overall pick, this dude's gonna have millions on top of millions with sponsors and Coca-Cola, Pepsi, whoever, FanDuel, Gametime app. By the way, I did just buy some tickets to the Bulls-Pacers game next week in Chicago using the Gametime app. It is very easy to use, people, and I got some great seats. And my fees were lower than other ticket providers. I'll say that. But when you think about that, the money he's going to make, maybe he will have enough money to just move his parents to Chicago with him, get like a townhouse or a big house where his parents can be right down the street. Like, he'll have the money to do that. I don't know if he's going to do that, but I do wonder about that, because the mental stability in a quarterback is the most important thing on that field. The other thing about the Bears, though, they didn't do right by Justin Fields. So I don't know, like you can tell everybody saying like, oh, they went and got Keenan Allen. They have DJ Moore. They went and got Swift from the Eagles. Like, yeah, they're trying to build a team and they're trying to put weapons around a quarterback now. They didn't have that before. Let's be real. They didn't have the receivers to support a throwing quarterback. Now they do. But is that going to be enough? And that's the question, is like, what does your offense look like? I love the Bill Cosby episode when he talked about when Vanessa bought home. Dabness Bricky was her husband's name. Never had met the family, and she bought this dude home. He was every bit of 45, and she was 18 in college. And he explained, he said, man, if you like filet mignon and all this other stuff, and you like steak and shrimp and chicken and, you know, asparagus with mashed potatoes, but then I was to put it on this garbage can lid and serve it to you, are you going to eat it? Is that appetizing? And that's what I feel like the Bears offense could possibly be. It could have like all the best like ingredients of a meal, and then it's served on a trash can lid. Like, what is your offense going to look like? So, because I think I heard you make the joke about the Commanders and whatever. Like, it is like the team they go to matters just as much as who they are. And I think that's the other thing we forget.
Ron, the assumption is the Vikings are trading up to the top 3, top 4, top 5 range to get a quarterback. It's almost like it's a done deal, the way people are talking about it, the media's talking about it, all that. And I mean, I get it. That's probably what's going to happen. But what's a move when it comes to the draft that not enough people are talking about or thinking about that you think Kwesi should be considering, or would maybe be a sneaky good move or idea that, you know, some people aren't talking about or thinking about right now?
Putting some marijuana in JJ McCarthy's car. And then calling the cops, because then nobody's going to want to draft him. He'll fall to you at 23. But no, I honestly don't think there is a move. I think sitting at 11, I don't feel like he's going to be gone before that, because I remember when I tweeted this a while ago, and that's what Sam's talking about after I think it was like when I saw Kwesi on the sideline of the Michigan game. And I started watching JJ McCarthy, and I started breaking down more stuff. I looked at him like standing next to, you know, other pros that were out there, because Michigan, I don't know if you notice, they have a lot of like former Michigan players that are on their staff. And so you see him, and he does like stand tall. He does command the huddle. He does like, and he reminded me of what Kevin O'Connell's looking for. And so when I said that, people are like, oh, he's not a first rounder. He didn't throw the ball against Penn State, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. I hope he's not. Like, I would love to get him in the second, third round. And then what happened? Everybody's back on the train now. Now you got to trade up for JJ McCarthy, but everybody's putting him at 11. I say Like, keep testing the waters and see if there's a great package and you know that's your guy, go get him. If you think Drake May is your guy and you got to go to 3, go get him. Drake May and JJ McCarthy seem like the two to me. Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams don't. I don't know why. Of the 4, Jaden Daniels seems like the one that's not going to work the most. I feel like Caleb Williams, Drake May, and JJ McCarthy will. But again, I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I just see sitting. If you sit and get him at 11, you're in a perfect spot now. Now at 23, you can go get another difference maker or get a second and a third round pick for that 23. And now you can add more capital or 2 2s for a 1 or a 2 this year and a 2 next year for a 1. Like, there's a lot you can do with that 23 if you feel like the guy we want is going to be in the second round. Let's not waste it and add another first rounder to this, because then we got to deal with his contract and the 5th year option and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Obviously, anything can happen on draft night, and there's always some big surprises and wild cards. But I think there is a few more options. There's a few more flexibility things that Kwesi now has that I just think like the mass media isn't really talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, he could easily package 11 and 23 and jump up to 3. Like, we know there's some teams that would take that, in a heartbeat, because now they get 2 first rounders. Mm-hmm. You look at a lot of these free agents getting picked up as quarterbacks. Some teams are like, I'd rather, take a guy that we know we're going to get versus taking a flyer on a top 3 pick. Again, that's a big number to jump if that doesn't work out, because now you put yourself in quarterback purgatory for another 3-4 years trying to find a guy. I mean, look at the Jets. They had to go get ayahuasca. That's what happens when you go get a guy and you're not sure. Then you got to take a big swing and go get a guy like Aaron Rodgers. That we
just
don't
nail a 7th round pick. It's super easy.
Get Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Just grab that.
No, so this is something that I've seen a lot when you're talking about JJ McCarthy in particular, because if the Vikings get JJ McCarthy, super likely that they traded up to like 4 or 5 to do it. But that's QB4, right? So trading a whole bunch of 1st round picks for the 4th best guy in the draft, like, is that like, how do we look at that and justify it as something that we can say is a win and not like this desperation move?
Right. And that's the problem, is you have to look at the teams in between, 4 to 10, and are any of them willing to like screw you over and take JJ McCarthy and then force your hand?
Yeah,
that's the other part, because there could be a
fear. Yeah,
correct, because there could be a trade in or a draft and trade. We've seen that happen before, where people draft somebody knowing they don't want them, but they're drafting them for the team they're going to trade with. Because that could happen too. Like, the Vikings could be talking to these other teams like, hey, we might not trade you now, but on draft day, would you be willing to take this guy? And if you take JJ McCarthy, we'll give you, whatever. We'll give you 11, and then we'll give you XYZ. Maybe they can keep 23 if they give up something else. But that's going to be the game Kwesi has to play. Like I said, draft day, the movie, we know it's not 100% accurate, but we know it's not all false. And so when you look at, if you go down to like the executive producers and the people they talk to from draft day, there's some GMs on there. There's some ESPN analysts on there. So clearly there's a little bit of truth to some of those phone calls. I've been a part of that, where I've seen GMs call GMs, and it is that. It is the like, well, what do you want? All right, man, let me call you back. And then the room talks. And then they be like, I said I was going to call him back in 10 minutes. They wait 11 minutes just to make them sweat. Then they call him back in that 11th minute. Hey, what do you want to do? Because they know the clock. And then they're like, shoot, we got 3 minutes. Like, is there anybody else on the phone? Nope. All right, take that. Like, that's the game. And so this is where, I don't know if we call him Vegas Kwesi. I don't know what we call him, international gambler Kwesi, 007 Kwesi. Like, you've got to play chicken with another team. And that's what the NFL draft is all about. Are you willing to play chicken to hope you get your guy where you get him? Or do you do what who did that? Was that the Bears jump to get Mitchell Trubisky? Like, everybody scared them into thinking, oh, we're going to take Mitchell Trubisky. All right, screw it. Let's do it. Come give it to me. Same with Bryce Young. Look at what the Panthers gave up for Bryce Young. They are literally kicking themselves in the butt right now. So that's the game you decide, is like, the guy we're going up to get, is he worth that? And I think that's the question, because I don't even know where the Panthers would have been and who they would have gotten. And I never look back at that. Like, I don't know if they would have
like 9, right? They turned it up from 9 to 1. Yeah.
So would Anthony Richardson have been there possibly, or no?
No,
he
Anthony
went
Richardson
third.
went 4.
Okay,
right?
so they would have at least get in the top 3.
They were trying to get to 3, to get him.
Yeah.
I think it's a fair point and question, though, Luke. Like, it does put a bad taste in some people's mouth to trade all that asset and ammo for the fourth best quarterback. Like, you're finally going to go get one, and it's most people's, and you never know until we get him in here, but it's the fourth best quarterback. I get it.
Lamar was the fourth best quarterback in his draft.
Yeah,
he was the fifth.
Oh, yeah, fifth. Yeah,
there's always one or two.
I mean, where was Brock Purdy? What was he in his draft class?
No, absolutely. It's so true.
Only guy to work out at all in that draft class.
I think again though, it's if you stayed put at 11 and got the fourth best quarterback, way different feeling. Giving up all that future ammo, it feels a little different.
The value there, yeah. And if you move up, you're not adding an impact piece at a different position, which is why the tail end of free agency is going to be important to see how the Vikings operate. I do want to go just around the table in our final minutes and get either a name or just a position that you're targeting for the remainder of free agency. I do want to ask one question, though. Do we think that the Harrison Smith cap number is going down by a lot, because over the cap still has it at 19 million. Do we think that's getting cut in half?
There was some reporting on this just pretty recently on what the cap number was, and I think the reason over the cap didn't update it is just because all of the details weren't there.
Yeah. So it's going to go down by like 6.
It was either one or the other, though, right? It was either like 9 million or 6 million, though, right?
No, so it was reported that it was a deal worth $9 million. The confusion is, does that mean his salary is $9 million, but his bonus and all that other stuff is still going to be the same, which I believe leads to a cap hit of like 13 mil. Mm-hmm. Or is that the entire value of the deal, meaning like his cap hit went down like 10 million? And then I think the clarity we got just recently that Reeves talking about is that it was his salary went down to from 14 to 9 million. So it saves like $5 or $6 million.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say the Vikings have 12 to 15 million to deal with. They've got a little bit of change here for free agency. Is there a player or position that you want as free agency kind of goes into these latter stages? 30 seconds each. Inman.
Tyler Boyd's still out there. He was, one of my top favorites when we did the wide receiver free agent episode, a month ago. I would love to get him as your wide receiver 3. Are you kidding me? That's an upgrade over KJ Osborne, as much as we all love KJ Osborne. And then Connor Williams, he plays center, right? Because I'll take that depth in a heartbeat right now, just to have a swing interior guy who's actually above average and can play guard or center if Brandell or Ingram go down or struggle. Same with Bradbury if he gets hurt, which, he has been more prone to do as of late.
Arif.
Yeah, I like the Connor Williams one. I just think just fill out that cornerback room and add some edge rushers just generally. Nobody necessarily specific. You've got like players like Stephon Gilmore and Adoree Jackson out there. You've got J.C. Jackson out there. I don't think he's any good, but you might as well add a couple of bodies. At edge rusher, there's a couple of guys. Emmanuel Ogbah was productive, I think, in Miami. You've got Unique Ngakoue. You could bring him back. Randy Gregory. These are all players that I don't think would be. Yeah, sure. I'm not a huge Bud Dupree guy, but no, these are all players that I think would not be people that you rely on starting, but have upside as potential starters and would help fill out depth. I imagine most of these guys would be cut in camp, but I would just like to see the opportunity for veteran competition instead of a 4th, 5th round guy.
Mm-hmm. Ron?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the corners and I kind of felt the same way. I mean, you look at J.C. Jackson. I originally, so before the Harrison Smith thing, I was kind of looking at like, some of these free agent safeties, and you don't know what you're going to get. Like the names are bigger than what they've been. Like, Quandre Diggs, you got Jamal Adams, it's a lot of guys. You got Micah Hyde, which most of those seem like they're going to go back to your guy, but you got Stephon Gilmore. So I don't know if the Vikings are going to take a big swing like that at cornerback when they already, they just got Shaquill Griffin. So I'm guessing they're probably trying to figure out how to get everybody in. And then hopefully it's a potential Justin Jefferson signing. I think that's their thought. I just don't know if they have the money for some of these, because we can name names, but who can they afford? And I think that's the key for me. But, I'm J.C. Jackson, if they were to add that at corner, I wouldn't mind it. Stephon Gilmore, I don't think they can get him. But again, that's another solid cornerback to go opposite of Byron Murphy. And then now you don't have to rely on the Caleb Evans, and he comes in more as your third, DB.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I need a big boy. They have 2 players on the defense right now over 300 pounds. Just comparing to last year, they had 3.
I need a big boy.
I need a big boy.
Isn't that Rihanna song?
Probably.
Rude boy.
Odds are.
Rude boy. Yeah. A big rude boy. Yeah. They need a D tackle. Is he? I thought he signed somewhere. Or no?
I
would love that.
At large.
He's good.
like even if it's a depth guy, like I'm thinking like the Kyrie's Tonga replacement. We haven't really replaced that role. Even if Jaquel and Roy like steps up and takes it over, I still think you need another one for depth.
Calais
What
Campbell.
about
He's only
what about a guy that
37?
was with Flores for his last couple of years in New England, ended up in Miami in 2021, which I think was Flores' last year there. How about Adam Butler? He's technically listed at 300 pounds. He would count.
That guy's been around for a while.
He's been around for a while, which has kind of been the MO. You know, we got guys that have kind of been in the middle of their second contract, like Shaquill Griffin, like Jahad Ward. So
I just Googled Tyler Tart. It does not look like he is signed anywhere. He visited the Bengals, did not look like he signed with the Bengals. I like him a lot, actually. Yeah. So for sure.
Tyler Tart then.
Tyler Tart. I would also appreciate like a veteran guard, not Dan Feeney. Maybe like a John Feliciano, Greg Van Roten, someone who could possibly compete.
Jesus.
I think it's going to be interesting watching how much
sticking around.
Watch
like
how
40.
much the top of the guard market got that first wave of free agency, that first tier versus what you're going to see with the second and third tier. I think there's going to be a huge contrast now.
Getting intel that Butler's signed.
And sorry, the song is by SZA. It's called Big Boy.
Butler already signed it.
Okay.
All right.
Of course.
Well, tell PFF
thank you for the correction.
How about Tyler Tart?
We'll be live again on Monday, going live Mondays and Thursdays on the Minnesota Football Party. Ron Johnson hosting his show on Tuesdays and the Roundtable on Fridays. Make sure to check that out and follow Ron at 3 Ron Johnson. Thanks to everybody who interacted and commented today. We appreciate that. For Luke, the journalist, Arif Hasan, Ron Johnson, I'm Sam Ekstrom saying so long today on Locked On Sports Minnesota.